So anyway, I'm Tom Kirkham. I am founder and CEO of IronTech Security. We are what's known in the business as an MSSP. So if you know what an MSP is, we are a managed security solutions provider. So we are a security company first that specializes in InfoSec or information security. I make that distinction very carefully because it needs to be made, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a moment. I have 35 years in technology, not to say too much about my age. I started when I was 3. And I've got numerous awards from Microsoft, and I do these things all the time. I used to do it in person, but hey, for the last year, it's been Zoom and other platforms. Kenzie has put a link to our website in the chat box. You can click on that and come back to the webinar or whatever, just so you got the website up, so you can look it over afterwards. And she'll be posting some other links as we go on. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box or the chat box. And if it's something that we feel we should answer live, we will do so. Otherwise, we'll hold it to the end. So having said that, let's get into it. At the end of this webinar, you'll know how to protect your client's data from theft or worse. And there is worse things than just having it stolen. Protect your firm from ransomware. That is the most important and the most likely attack your firm is likely to encounter. Stay off the 7 o'clock news and protect your reputation. If there's one thing accountants have to have is a reputation. And if you compromise your client's data, or your firm, just your firm gets compromised, that could possibly put you out of business. Prevent fines and penalties. HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, you've got to report breaches in most states. Probably, I'm sure South Carolina is one of them. I think maybe all of them by now, but you want to stop that from happening. You're also going to learn how and why you need to implement a business resilience plan and stay in business in the event of a successful attack. And we have to plan for that. And protect your business from insider threats. It's probably not what you think. And ultimately, the goal is just being able to sleep at night, knowing that you understand the risk, the balance of risk and the balance of productivity with security, and you are well educated on what it takes and what you choose to implement in your firm to protect your client data. Make sure you stay in business, all of those things. That'll help you sleep at night. Let's look at some latest headlines. Ransomware. Not sure what that one is, but it's a cyber attack. It's probably ransomware. These are all South Carolina, by the way. It's the water supplier. We work in the water industry with critical infrastructure. Everyone's got to have water. Everyone has to pay taxes. Library ransomware attack. Mount Pleasant got hit with an email phishing scam. Some of those are, especially if it's spear phishing, they'll say, like every time we hire someone new, within 30 days, they get a spear phish. It may be from me, it could be from Kenzie, it could be from the president, and they're so new, they don't really know if it's real or not, even though they've been through training. So invariably we get asked and we discover it. So we have got a target on our back. If you get spear phished in your organization, you will get spear phished again. They're going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. So cybersecurity awareness training is very, very important. Let's take a look at some hacking statistics. This is the beginning of a slides that's going to illustrate the sheer scale and size of the criminal cyber industry, cybersecurity industry, the criminal cyber attack industry. The fourth quarter of 2019, the average ransomware attack was a little over $70,000. It has increased to the last quarter that we have accurate data. It was the third quarter of 20, and it's now the average ransomware payment is $240,000. Now, this is the average ransomware payment, and I'm sure you guys have seen, headlines of city of Atlanta got hit with $20 million ransomware attack and things like that. And you may be aware, or maybe you yourself have been hit with ransomware and it was $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. So, but even a small firm or a medium-sized firm, $10,000, $50,000, that's a lot of money. And that is one of the things, that's the most likely thing to happen to you. And that's one of the things that makes cybersecurity defenses cheap in the long run. Another stat, cybercrime is more profitable than the combined worldwide illegal drug trade. Worldwide, not just the multi-billion-dollar illegal drug trade in the United States. We're talking worldwide. It's huge, huge industry. Since ransomware was released into the wild, I think around 20 years ago, I'll have to look that up because I've forgotten what it was. It's a lot longer than what I realized, actually. But anyway, since ransomware has been created, 2 out of 5 small to medium-sized businesses have fallen victim to a ransomware attack. These attacks are growing more than 350% annually. And the reason for that is most businesses do not have the proper defense in place. So it's still easy money if you're a criminal. And to give you this is the beginning of talking about the sheer scale of the industry. I want you to pretend for a few minutes that I'm a bad hacker. A black hat hacker is what we call them in the business. We have white hat, we have black hats. There's some gray hats too. But let's pretend I'm a black hat hacker that distributes ransomware. That's my specialty, okay? I can go on the dark web and buy a hacking kit for $1. So who are these hackers? Generally speaking, if you've attended an FBI webinar or some other InfoSec webinar like this, it's generally broken down into about 4 groups. The first and foremost is organized crime. This is by far the ransomware is by far distributed by organized crime than the other groups. And the reason is it's so profitable. There was 2 guys, presumably 2 guys, they went by the name of C and G Crab. And they created a ransomware attack that netted, it grossed $2.5 billion worldwide. They each made $300 or $400 million a piece. They had a big network. I mean, it was millions of emails and other distribution methods that it was done. They did revenue share with other syndicates and individuals, and they accumulated this money in 3 or 4 months. And then they went on the dark web on a message board and said, hey, thanks everybody. We're shutting it all down. Get your money out now. We're going to buy an island and retire. Now, it looks like they've popped about a year or 2 later that we're seeing evidence that they've popped back up, that I guess retirement didn't suit them or it was trying to put everybody off the trail. But they made $2.5 billion on just that one attack. So what's happening here is the criminal side of it is vertically specialized. Okay, remember the hacking kit that I can buy on the dark web. There's organizations and individuals that specialize in doing nothing but building attack software kits. And so what is that? I can go in and with a mouse, I install a program on my computer, launch it, and I say, I want my first, if there's less than 10 workstations, the first ransom demand is $5,000. If there's more than 50, I want it to be $50,000. And I set all these different parameters, these variables, right? Depending on the environment that it discovers, it finds itself in. I want it to double every day, and I want it to end in 5 days. I want to, and would you like to do the optional distribute the data collected for a ransom? Yes, I want to do that. So that tells them that even if you don't pay the ransom, or if you still don't pay the ransom, I'm going to distribute all the data that I've found on your network on the dark web. So that gives them another incentive to pay the ransom. And then I'm going to make another couple of mouse clicks, and I'm going to deploy a server backdoor and a keylogger on every workstation that I can discover, or multiple backdoors. It really doesn't matter to me. Okay. Then I'm going to go to another specialist on the dark web that specializes in email list. And let's say I want to attack accounting firms, law firms, water utilities. I obtain a list of good victims, good targets, good marks, as they say in a confidence scheme or a con job. And then I go, well, I can't just send out 10 million emails or whatever it may be through my normal. I'll get shut down. So I need to go out on the dark web and rent an email server, because I'm going to use it for felonious purposes. And I want to distribute these 10 million emails. I'm going to use what my specialty is attaching Excel spreadsheets, maybe Word documents to emails. And then my true specialty is using psychological techniques such as a sense of urgency, or perhaps being cut off from a supplier that's critical to the accounting industry or the law industry. And I'm very skilled at this. And so instead of a 0.5% conversion rate, to use a marketing term, I'm so good at it, I get a 3 or 4% conversion rate, because I understand how to get in and manipulate the receivers of these emails. And some of these are very good these days. The days of broken English, bad grammar, bad logos, bad artwork, those are over. They've been over for 2 or 3 years. There are emails that we get all the time that we see. Sometimes, most of them get caught in our spam filter, but I go through and look at those periodically just to see how the game changes, right? I want to see how these con artists are up in their game and what techniques and tactics they're using, what their objectives are. And so at any rate, I distribute it. I make my, whatever it may be, gross $1 million, $5 million, take a few months off. Oh, I forgot. I distributed server backdoors and keyloggers on all the workstations. I can sell those lists of machines, those targets on the dark web, and have another additional source of revenue. I post a deal up on one of the message boards on the dark web to other hackers and say $100 for a list of server backdoors, or maybe 1,000, whatever the going rate is. Same thing, sell the list of all the workstations that have put keyloggers on there. In case you don't know, a keylogger records all the keystrokes. So there are specialists that go through those logs and pull out all of the online credentials to things like bank accounts and Facebook, social media, email, whatever's stored in that keylogger. They specialize in just refining that data for use. And then they may use it, or they may sell that refined data out on the dark web. Kind of gives them a layer away from the felonious or the illegal part of it. Okay. It's a big, big industry. If you imagine a big, huge medical center, like in Columbus maybe, and all of the specialties that's under the roof of that hospital, the cyber criminal industry has that many, if not more, specialties. It's a huge, huge industry. The reason we need to know these groups is so we can study their tactics, their objectives, and who they're most likely to target, right? So in the next one, the APT groups, or we used to call them nation states, Now that terrorist organizations, they're becoming APT groups. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if the Boogaloo Boys or whatever they're called, or, you know, these types of domestic terrorism, and I wouldn't be surprised if they've got cyber attack arms organizations inside their organization. So, and they tend to do APT and other nation state type activities. But what nation states do, for an example, is Russia. They create chaos. They sow unrest in the population. They create doubt about the election. Maybe not so much this past one, but the one before, certainly they did. China, their main objective, it's not 100% of their attacks, but their main objective right now is stealing intellectual property. So they want to go into manufacturing facilities that have patents and other valuable intellectual property. They may go break into law firms that specialize in intellectual property. That's what China wants to do, is they want to sell that stuff, or I mean, obtain that stuff and use it, give it to their companies. Other things that nation states do, such as Iran and North Korea, because of all the sanctions against them, they are in dire need of US dollars. So those two actually distribute ransomware as well. Another group that we kind of lump all together is hacktivists, lone wolves, other malcontents. Hacktivists, pretty self-explanatory. They're usually involved with social issues or human rights or privacy rights, things like that. And so they might take out a denial of service attack on a foe of theirs, right? You know, shut their website down. There was one this year on Michigan took their law exam online, and I don't know who the group was, but somebody had a bone to pick with lawyers in Michigan. Maybe it was that militant group. And they shut down the online exam test. So you just never know where those are going to come from. Lone wolves. Because of a lone wolf, I am on an ISIS kill list. So what happened was a U.S. citizen in Georgia hacked a social media database. And she had hacked some other databases that also drove some ISIS kill list. If you guys remember, about 4 years ago, maybe 5, there were, you know, kill lists being distributed for like military personnel, law enforcement officers, maybe politicians in Washington. And then right about the end, they distributed a kill list that was random. It was about 8,000 or 9,000 people in the United States, totally random. I was on that list. Apparently, this woman in Georgia was sympathetic to ISIS and wanted to get street cred, I guess, to join the militia. And she sent the list that she had hacked and provided it to what the department at ISIS was called the United Cyber Caliphate. So that was their cyber attack arm inside of ISIS. It got published. FBI agent visited me, told me, hey, you're on a kill list, congratulations. And that's the way it was. It was a totally random thing. People, you know, we've got guys that work in the Middle East, or one guy that works in the Middle East, and I've done international software development and things like that. And of course, in the security business, you become a target anyway. But that wasn't what it was. It was purely random. The other guy in town that was on the list, there was 2 of us in town, and this is named, right? It's name, address, phone number, place of employment, and some other personal information. The other guy was a middle-level executive at ArcBest, the trucking company here in town. And he didn't have any idea how he got on the list. So anyway, later on, I did some research, and it's the social media website's long since been closed up. But that is lone wolves. Yeah. So if someone else that lives here, United States citizen, is sympathetic to ISIS and they live in my town, what better way than to go kill me or the other guy or both of us to get street cred with ISIS? That's the only thing I worry about. I don't worry about someone flying over here and just specifically to kill 9,000 of us. But here's the one you really got to be watching out for. Remember the one that I said It's not what you think. Over 90% of successful breaches, including ransomware, I would go so far as it's much higher than 90% on successful ransomware breaches, require, over 90% of all breaches require an insider to help them attack the firm. And they're non-malicious insiders. They are the ones that take that finely crafted, psychologically motivated email that I crafted and clicks on the file attachment and unleashes the ransomware attack. So you have to train everybody and you continuously train them to stay up to date on the latest techniques, tools, objectives, the latest threat actors to your organization. You just got to do continuous cybersecurity training. So let's look at some myths that we hear frequently, repeatedly, and I think we got about 7 of them. We're too small. You may be thinking, I'm just a one-person accounting firm. There's only 2 of us in the office. Nobody's ever heard of us. We're small town, South Carolina. Why would anybody attack us? They don't even know who we are. We don't even have a website. We use a Yahoo email address or a Gmail address. They don't care. It's a numbers game. Think about the scale of the international criminal part of cyber attacks. They don't know and they don't care. I just want my conversion rate to be high. That's it. The higher my conversion rate, the more money I make. And I don't care if you're a 1-horse company or a 1,000-horse company, because I've designed the attack to compensate for the size of the victim. Busted. Another one that I hear, and you guys know this is not true, but this typically happens, at a personal level. Like, I don't have anything to hide. I don't care if the government looks into it. Well, it's not just the government, not to get off on that wagon, but you've got to protect your privacy. All data is valuable. Your client's data, your own accounting data, your marketing data, all that's valuable. But think about it personally. Do you have 20 years of family photos or videos stored on your computer? And how much would you be willing to pay if your home computer was hit with ransomware? Remember, as a ransomware attacker, I don't really care if it's a home user or a business. I just know the businesses will pay more. So maybe I'll put a switch in there that if it's not Windows Pro and it's a Windows Home Edition, I'd drop the ransom down to $300 instead of $5,000 that I'd charge a business. The difference between a home license and a pro license, that's a good sign that it's either in a business or it's in a home. Okay. I can look at the computer and on the fly adjust my ransom before they even know, because I'm already encrypting the files, and ransomware remains stealth until it's found everything it can to encrypt. And that's when it announces, here's how much you need to pay me. We've done forensics or postmortems on successful attacks, and we found one that was working for 3 or 4 days. It was encrypting for 3 or 4 days before it popped up. That was how much data it was encrypting. What's another myth? Cybersecurity is expensive. I'm talking about good cybersecurity, Fortune 100 level, enterprise grade, military grade. Cybersecurity is not expensive. The SolarWinds attack, you guys are probably familiar, and it hit DOD and other government agencies, and it was just, it's one of the worst breaches the United States government has ever been hit with. All of the people that had the SolarWinds software and had our very own EDR, and I'll tell you what that is here in a minute, none of those were victims. Their EDR, the very exact same EDR that we provide to our clients, stopped those computers from being hacked, even though they had the SolarWinds Orion software installed. And it's affordable, I promise you. This one I hear from IT people. Antivirus is good enough, or that's all there is, right? Just don't click on file attachments from people you don't know. Well, that's not good enough. I'm a psychological master. I'm going to manipulate you in my con to open that file some way, somehow. And let me tell you something about antivirus. If you're relying on antivirus to protect your firm, you're just wasting your time, money, and energy. It's a false sense of security. The NSA was breached about 3 years ago. Their own hacking tools and source code is for sale on the dark web. Some of the best crypto attack software in the world is on the dark web. And the NSA was breached. Think about that. If they can be breached, anyone can be breached. And as a criminal, I have access to their tools, and it's not expensive. So what you want to do is rip out antivirus and replace it with EDR, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This one comes up quite a bit with new clients, or prospects, I should say. Well, we survived a ransomware attack, and we just want to make sure we don't get another one. But we're all good now. We survived it. We restored from a backup, or we paid the ransom, whatever it may be. We have yet to go into a new client that had a successful ransomware attack and not found other dormant payloads like server backdoors, keyloggers, Trojans, viruses that were just waiting for somebody to buy that list that specializes in exploiting those vulnerabilities. Some of them had been on there for well over a year, just laying there dormant. And eventually, somebody's going to exploit that back door that's just waiting. They don't have to do it. They don't even have to go through the psychological manipulation part. It's just laying there, ready for somebody to, oh, I go to this IP and do this, and bam, there it is. Yeah, I'm in the network. So if you have had a successful ransomware attack, especially in the last couple of 3 years, if you weren't using a InfoSec company, chances are there's other stuff on the network. We have cybersecurity insurance. This is easy. People have a tendency to go buy it first. But you don't go driving like a maniac just because you've got automobile insurance. You don't not fix the wiring in your house just because you've got homeowners insurance. You need to think about security for your organization the same way. And furthermore, insurance, because this industry changes so fast, faster than regular IT, I might add, because it's got IT plus cops and robbers, right? Because it changes so fast, the insurance companies put in a lot of loopholes. So if they've asked you a question for something that you think you have, but you don't, and you get a breach, they've got a loophole and they're going to deny the claim. But first and foremost, that money should be invested in good security first. I'm just shocked at how many small firms will spend $2,000 or $3,000 a year on an insurance policy when that same money could protect them at 99.99%. So just because you got insurance doesn't mean you can't be put out of business by a cybersecurity event. And this one, people have it. You've heard me make very clear distinctions between the IT business and the security business. So cybersecurity is not an IT thing. It's not a component of IT. It is under the whole security umbrella, and it has an IT part to it, or an IT specialty within security. It's not part of IT. So what do I mean by that? Here's the way most people today, even Fortune 100 companies, they're quickly changing. But if you just look at a regular org chart, and I know most of you probably don't have these official COO, CMO titles and all of that, that's fine. But somebody in your organization is wearing those hats. Maybe you're wearing 3 of them or all of them. Okay. So you have to think about, what would a CFO do in this role? What would a CIO, Chief Information Security Officer, do? I'm sitting here listening to Tom. We got to get our security up and everything. Well, if you are a big company, you're going to have what's known as the Chief Information Security Officer. If you outsource it, you will typically outsource it to an MSSP, Managed Security Services Provider. But this is the way it's tend to be thought about. So even if you outsource or you have an IT staff, the CEO will say, oh, well, cybersecurity is something IT needs to worry about it. Delegate it to the CIO. And then he goes and educates himself on security and picks multiple vendors and puts in protections, puts in layers of defenses, whatever else. But the problem with that is he tells the CEO that, yeah, we got that covered, but he doesn't, or she doesn't really understand the security side of it, because we have to think about door locks and things like that, video surveillance, biometric scanners, badge readers, vehicle locks, vehicle tracking. There's a lot of physical world stuff that goes into this. He doesn't adequately explain it to the CEO, so the CEO doesn't know what risk he's under until Channel 7 News shows up or a newspaper calls and said, we understand you had a data breach and your client files are available for sale on the dark web, or worse, identity theft, many other things. So what modern companies are doing these days is they're making that CISO, depends on who you are, where you're from, I guess, but it's fast changing business. These things change constantly, it seems like. It needs to be on par with the finance guy, the operations guy, because the finance guy may tell the IT guy, we can't afford that. Well, as a security specialist, I need to make the case to the CEO that says, here's what's going to happen if you don't afford this. Here's what risk you're under. Here's how serious that risk is. So you need to treat IT and security, or InfoSec, separately. It's two different specialties. It's about the difference between a neurosurgeon and a rheumatologist, or oncologist is probably even better. Oncologist versus a neurosurgeon. But ultimately, the buck stops with that CEO. So you have to understand what risk you are going to take in cybersecurity, and you will take a risk. You will not be 100% protected. No way, no how. It's no such thing. So you have to know what that level of risk is. All right, let's talk about cybersecurity fundamentals. You will want to write this down if you haven't already been writing. You want to do SOAR, security, orchestration, automated response, and we'll go into more detail. You want best of breed controls. Remember the EDR that I mentioned? That's the one that we use is obviously best of breed because well, it is best of breed. It's generally accepted all over the world as best of breed. You want to put in a layered defense strategy. You want to have multiple things protecting your assets or the data that you need to protect. You're going to use 3 different types of controls to do all of these different things. And then finally, you want to make sure that everything you do is implemented in the specifications contained in the Nist cybersecurity framework. So let's get into these. So what is SOAR? Security, orchestration, automation, and response. So it requires security specialists, SOC, security operation specialists, security analysts to do postmortems or analysis on current attacks, past attacks, successful, unsuccessful. It begins with the very first part of this. It's assessing what do you have that needs protect and what do we need to do to protect it. Requires orchestration with all parties, all stakeholders, the board, the head honcho, IT people. You know, if you outsource your IT people, that's fine. We need to orchestrate with them. Board members, so on and so forth. Partners. We're all going to work together and orchestrate defensive postures. Then we're going to orchestrate the choosing and the implementation of the controls. And then all of the mitigation and response and the monitoring is going to be orchestrated. In our case, it's across multiple SOCs all over the country with multiple vendor partners, including ourselves, and we orchestrate all of the monitoring, the mitigation, and the remediation of any sort of anomaly. even if it wasn't a successful attack. We've got human beings that alerts get triggered and they go, I better check into that and see what's up. We want to make sure we're monitoring these, looking for possible events, security events. And if it's all done right, you've got a well-playing orchestra. And since we have an orchestra there, you've got the violin section, you got the cello section, or whatever that call. I don't know much about orchestras, but you got horns and percussion, whatever else, right? So that's the way we think about these controls and layers, okay? But what do I mean about best of breed, okay? So best of breed means it's pretty simple. All the controls we implement are what is generally considered best of breed. The Nist cybersecurity framework is best of breed framework. It is used all over the world by organizations of all shapes, sizes, colors, flavors, whatever you want to do. The alternative to best of breed controls are integrated solutions. So invariably, someone is going to leave this webinar and say, wait a minute, I got an email from McAfee or Bitdefender or Norton that says they've got all the same things that Tom was talking about. And you call them up and lo and behold, guess what? They've got all the same things and they're the best. I'm here to tell you, I have never seen an integrated solution that has a best of breed anything in their integrated suite, not even close. At best, it's consumer grade, but the ransomware attack doesn't care if it's a home computer or a business computer. So they need enterprise grade stuff too. Now, so basically, even though they're covering these multiple layers that we're going to talk about, none of it's really good at it. It plays nice together because we have some controls that we can't put two of the same controls in the same environment because they don't play nice. But we know that, and consequently we don't put them in there. When we bring another control into our security stack, we make sure it plays nice with others. It doesn't matter if it's a piece of software or a policy or procedure. It's got to play nice with all the other controls we have in place. We want to make sure we do defense in depth or a layered onion model. There's other models, Swiss cheese and stuff, but onion's pretty easy to grasp. Okay, you identify what you need to protect: client data, financial data, marketing data. We don't want anything stolen. And you got to protect it from these hackers. Remember, we already know who the hacker is most likely to attack: an accounting firm or a water utility or whatever. We know their techniques and their objectives, and their tactics. So what do we need to do to protect ourselves? Well, in this particular example, I'm going to talk about the three things that you will write down that you need. The outside layer, first line of defense, the infantry, if you will, continuous cybersecurity training. Okay, that's the first layer. And I know there's technically somebody's going to say, well, I thought spam filter would be the first. That's fine. We do have, but we're trying to make this simple. Spam filter would be the first layer to stop ransomware from getting through. But anyway, you want to have an EDR. We want to rip out that antivirus and replace it with a product that's known in the industry as endpoint detect and respond. It also goes by endpoint protection platform. It also goes by managed detect and respond, which is actually what we do, or MEDR, MDR, EPP. It's a fast changing industry. It's hard to keep up with sometimes, but at its core, it's an EDR. It uses AI and machine learning, and it looks at behavior, not virus signatures. Okay. And then finally, how are we going to respond? How are we going to recover in the case of either a natural disaster, a fire, a flood, tornado, whatever, or a successful breach, a successful ransomware attack? How are we going to respond and make our business resilient and not go down? And the not go down part is a function of time and money. Okay. So the shorter your window that you can't be down, and you guys can be down for 5 minutes. I know you can. Probably you could tolerate being down for 5 hours, maybe even 5 days if it's not tax season, right? But there's other industries that can't be down for 20 minutes, like hospitals and things like that. It's a function of money and time, right? The shorter that time frame is, the more expensive it is. No one can guarantee 100% uptime. Google can't do it. Amazon can't do it. Microsoft can't do it. None of those companies can do it. So that's part of your risk analysis. How short of a time frame are you willing to pay for? What does your business need? You don't need 100% uptime. Think about that whenever you're looking at security products. The alternative to this is a single layer of defense, like the French Maginot Line. Didn't work out too well. Germans were in the streets of Paris in 6 weeks. All right, let's take a look at controls. What do I mean by controls? There's 3 types. There's physical controls, like your front door, the key, the lock. Maybe you lock your computer room, your server closet, your server room, and you control access to it. Who has the key? That's a different type of control. Then there's technical controls, like software that we're going to implement, network tools, hardware devices. These are technical hardware components. And then the third one, and the most important one, is the Kinsey. Are you guys still seeing my screen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it kind of went weird on me. The third one and the most important one, and the other 2 won't work without administrative controls. These are policies and procedures that you have today in your practice that makes everything else work. The simplest deal is you've got a key, you've got a physical control, you got a lock on your front door, your back door, right? The administrative controls, who has those keys? What hours are those doors unlocked? Those are administrative controls. The key itself is a physical control. In the case of our industry, technical control would be an EDR. The administrative control is what's the response to a security anomaly. See, none of those work without administrative controls. And in fact, some things in your business is strictly administrative controls. Like, don't talk about client data. You don't talk about a client's business to other people in the public, right? That's an administrative control. You've got dozens and hundreds of these already in place. We're just increasing it to respond to modern day security threats. Okay. So what is Nist cybersecurity framework? It's any of you that have looked into this, it's page after page of technical talk and things like that, and it can be very, very overwhelming. I'm going to make it very, very simple. There's 5 parts to it. First thing is identifying what needs to be protected, and perhaps as importantly is assessing your own security maturity. What is your firm's security maturity? If you're not using a password manager and you're reusing password, your security maturity is not very high. It's bad. Okay. If you're writing them on sticky notes, that's bad. You need to use complex passwords unique to every login. Now we got to protect it. We're going to put in EDRs. You're going to put in a door lock, right? The cybersecurity framework works for a lot of different things. You've got to put in controls to detect events or to report events. We've stopped ransomware outbreaks simply because the user said something doesn't feel right and they called us and we said, pull the power out of the wall to the computer right now. And we have actually prevented successful breaches because we've done that, because the user was trained to detect something that doesn't feel right, a bad vibe, or their computer hiccuped. Okay. It also includes, the fourth one is the respond. What do we do to respond to a security event or what I just described? Well, just pull it out of the wall. Do whatever you've got to do to shut that PC off, or at least get it off the network. And then finally, the fifth part of the CSF is your response plan. What are you going to do to respond to a successful ransomware outbreak in your firm? Restore from backup, pay the ransom, hopefully not pay the ransom, but I understand the business case for that. I believe me, I don't like paying criminals off either, but they actually do a great job with customer service and everything. They know that if they don't unencrypt your file, it's bad business, and that whole ransomware industry would go out of business. So that you can take that, that's actually a myth. Well, how do I know they're going to unencrypt it? It's very rare that the unencryption fails, and it's usually not because of theft. It's because of some sort of technical problem that happened to prevent the unencryption. But believe me, they do not want that to fail. They put multiple checks in. They actually have 800 numbers to call you to help you learn how to buy Bitcoin, and to help if you do have technical problems, that'll help you diagnose it, and they can remote in. They're already in your network, right? If there's a technical snafu with unencrypting the files, you might want to let them in to unencrypt the files. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but it's actually true. Okay, it's kind of funny, but yeah, they provide great customer service. All right, here's the 3 things. Write these down. You want to have an EDR, endpoint detect and respond, and remember it goes by MDR, EPP, MEDR. There's probably some others that I'm forgetting right now, but you want that EDR in there. You want a good EDR. There's a lot of them out there. Best of breed. Don't forget that. Don't get it from Norton or McAfee. You know, all of those things that you can buy to protect your accounting firm. If you can get it at Office Depot or Best Buy, it's not good. It's not good enough. The second thing you've got to have is a backup and disaster recovery, and those backups have differing objectives. We do not have a single client that doesn't have multiple backup strategies under the same roof. They're 2 different things, really, technically. Oh, well, and operationally too. And then finally, you want to have continuous cybersecurity awareness training. So remember Nist cybersecurity framework? How does all of that fit together with our 3 things? Just these 3 things. Now, you have other layers to the onion. You've got a firewall. You've got a spam filter. So now you got 4 layers, 5 layers, but you're probably missing these 3, or maybe some other layer that we'll touch on here in a moment. But these 3 are so critical and so important, they will dramatically make your security defense posture better. I mean, getting to where it's practically let's just say it's very unlikely that you're going to have a breach or a ransomware attack. Our clients that use what we tell them to have had almost 0 successfully encrypted files. We've had 1 outbreak that was wicked, wicked bad. It took weeks to recover from it, but it only resulted in just a handful of unimportant files getting corrupted on just 1 computer, but it was a wicked, wicked attack. But our defense tools stood strong, not like the French Maginot Line. How do those 3 things hit our onion layer and match up with the cybersecurity framework? All right, so we look at the onion layers. If you notice, for the 5 things in the Nist CSF, just those 3 tools have at least 2 layers to the onion, 2 layers of defense. And in fact, on the response, remember the incident where something just didn't feel right? You know, one of your users, they knew to call us because of training. EDR picks it up and kills off a lot of the ransomware attacks. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes another response plan. And backup and disaster recovery. Well, if your business resilience plan calls for a minimum of 10 minutes of downtime, we've got options for that. So it covers all 3 there. We can implement those controls like that. It really blows your mind when you think about it. At least it does mine. Okay, so as a security company, we consider these and many other controls that we can put in place. Some of these are technical controls. Some of them are administrative controls. Some of them are physical controls. It's very common for us to do, well, we always do EDS and EPS, so intrusion detection systems. That's how we can see these anomalies and security events. If you have any type of hardware, we can monitor that. We don't have to install things. We can monitor printers and switches and industrial control systems. You may have some guys that have machine shops or have other types of industrial control systems. We can monitor those devices. Totally platform agnostic. Multi-factor authentication. You guys probably have a lot of remote workers, or you remote into your clients' networks to do financial stuff. We want to make sure we've got multi-factor authentication, and we're going to think long and hard about setting up a virtual private network. And we may even do IP restriction. And that's mostly an administrative control. That's 3 controls we do just because of remote access. Since the days of COVID, the attempts to break through on remote access, just our own numbers showed that it went up 10-fold in the first month, that March of 2020. 10-fold increase in attacks on remote access ports on computer networks. Anyway, we think about these and other things, and some of you may need it, some of you may not. No one's got an unlimited budget, and even if you do, you're still never going to achieve 100% security. So we want to balance the risk, right? We want to balance against productivity, protecting data, staying in business. All of those things are considered and orchestrated in the assessment, implementation, response, and recovery. So other things, I've mentioned some of these. Security information and event manager is what we use for industrial control systems. I doubt many of you would be a good candidate for that unless you were a pretty good sized firm. Password manager, I can't say enough good things about password managers. Multi-factor authentication, that's a third piece of credentials that you probably use logging into like your bank's cash manager. They typically have better security. One of our banks actually has 4 pieces of security you got to use to log into the cash manager. Mobile device management. You've got email on your phone. You may even have client data, or maybe you use your iPad to access your office just to check something, maybe look at a report from time to time, but you got email on it probably, or your Android phone, whatever it is. Well, those are really likely to get lost or stolen. So we need ways to not only manage them to make sure they're standardized and nobody puts bad stuff on them, but we need to monitor them and have remote wipe and destroy capabilities in case it is lost or stolen, because they have access to your email. And if they got access to your email, they got access to everything, basically. All right. So we're finishing up here. Couple of things to keep in mind. Remember, I said we are different than IT, but we also work with IT. We love it. If you've got an on staff or you're outsourcing your IT stuff to an MSP or a break fix company, it doesn't matter to us. We love it. And we have a partner program for them. And so we work together to do the orchestration of the assessment all the way through the life of the relationship. So we can actually monitor things from them. Oh, while I'm thinking about monitoring, if you don't monitor your backups each and every single day, you don't have a backup. You got a wing and a prayer that it's there when you need it. Okay. So if you say you outsourced your IT, or even if it's in-house, because I've seen in-house people not monitor it either. But if you're not paying, especially an outsourced IT company, to monitor and check those backups and periodically do restores, and furthermore, make sure they stay apprised of any new things that need to be backed up. If you're not paying them, they're not doing it. They've set it up, set and forget. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard of horror stories where they need a backup and they go in there, oh, it's been broken for 6 months. That usually goes hand in hand with a drive failure on a server. Like, you know, they do a RAID array, right? It's got redundant drives in it, physical redundant drives. And so if one breaks, nothing happens. Well, if you don't monitor those redundant drives, if 2 of them break, your server's gone and all the data's gone with it. No chance of recovery, unless you want to spend a ton of money on technical recovery. At any rate, we do that monitoring for our clients. The backup, we monitor our backups, we put humans on it, we automate it, and it's all orchestrated. And we respond and mitigate any backup failures immediately upon detection. And we do that each and every single day, all day long. Another thing that we do that I think is very valuable, especially for accountants, is we provide you with client-facing information, or prospect especially facing information, that you take security seriously, that your data is encrypted at rest in case your laptop is stolen. They can't get the data because you've got good administrative controls, and you deploy security awareness training, and you've got EDR, and you don't waste your time and money on antivirus. So that's something that will help you get more clients. Oh, and we do press releases if you want to announce to the media, if you guys are, if you do that kind of stuff, you're, a larger firm that does press releases, so-and-so joined from this other firm, blah, blah, blah. We can do that and get that into the news channel as well. So let's summarize here a little bit. The good stuff is not at Best Buy. Okay. I can't say that enough. You got to get it from a managed security service provider. Your IT guy or your MSP is going to say, oh, we can handle that. I would challenge that. You've got to have orchestration beginning to end. All of these tools, all of the assessment, all of these things, all of the recovery, it's got to be orchestrated because it's going to involve multiple vendors of yours and multiple people inside your organization. You want to make sure whoever you select is using multiple vendor security operations centers. I don't know how many vendors we have that run a SOC, but these are the guys that check into these anomalies. They orchestrate with us for remediation. We orchestrate with them for assessments and other things like that. But the main thing is we've got live human beings. They're monitoring stuff continuously. That's not what you get with an integrated suite. If it doesn't successfully kill it, you're on your own, okay? Got to have humans responding and analyzing all events, even the ones that the EDR successfully quarantined or killed. Humans still have to look into it to see if there's multiple payloads at least, or other things that happened in the security storyline. And you have to have a planned disaster and breach response. Okay. All right. So here's the good news. We can do a security assessment, no obligation. We're not hardcore. We do lots and lots of webinars. We do lots and lots of security assessments. We normally charge $495 for it. But for you guys, because my mom and dad lived in Aiken, South Carolina, they did really. We're giving you a free security assessment. Now this expires tonight at midnight. So and there's no obligation, no high pressure. You can take these results and hand it to whoever you want, your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law that does IT. You can say, hey, we need this stuff according to this security firm. What do you think? No obligation. We're easygoing. We do a lot of these and we protect a lot of companies. So at any rate, that's worth every bit of $500. In addition to that, the first 3 people that sign up for an assessment can have their choice of a Cabela's or Apple $100 gift card. There is a link in the chat box to where you can sign up, pick an appointment time, and get it scheduled. And it doesn't take a lot. It's easy peasy. It's, smaller firms, 20, 30 minutes of your time. It takes 2 or 3 hours on our side, but larger firms, maybe an hour or 2. And then if you bring in your IT staff, a little bit longer, but it's not painful, I promise you. And it's easy as that. And I went over 30 seconds. My apologies. I know your time is valuable as well as mine. I sincerely hope that you left this more knowledgeable than you were before an hour ago, and take these security threats seriously. It's probably one of society's biggest ignorance point. Not appreciating the sheer scale of hacking, the bad guys. But I'm here to tell you, just to give you an idea of the price, it averages about $30 per user per month. And generally speaking, that usually matches up with how much cybersecurity insurance is. Sometimes it's cheaper, sometimes it's more. Just depends on the firm and their needs and all of those other things. But we'll get you to that point with the security assessment. Any questions for anybody? Don't forget the link to sign up for the assessment. First $300 gift card once the assessment's finished, but you don't have to buy anything. And in fact, I'll even give you, what are we going to give them extra, Kenzie?
What do you mean extra? Like,
I guess we're not going to give them anything extra. We just started doing the gift card thing, and I feel like Santa Claus. So, just, at any rate, so anyway, the link is in chat. In all seriousness, I know you'll find it worth your time. So, we're the good guys. We want to protect you from the bad guys. So my number one role for the company is to evangelize and increase and do these educational type webinars. Yeah, there's a slide that we're selling something, and we're always selling something, but everything that I talked about and everything that we do is simply the right way. And if you're IT, you think about some of the things that you may have written down, well, then I don't care how much you trust them. Even if my brother was a cardiologist, I'm not going to let him do, get rid of my cancer. It's not the right thing to do, right? You don't hire your car mechanic to do heart surgery. And there truly is big differences. So anyway, sorry, I'm droning on. Once again, we sincerely appreciate your time. And Leslie here is suggesting maybe 1 month free.
mm-hmm.
It costs us a lot of money to deploy this. And the funny thing about that is that if you don't have any breaches in the first month, how do you know it works? Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we've actually thought long and hard about that. And in fact, we've had people that say, hey, we need, we don't know. We don't do a really good job of explaining and showing you what all we protect you from. Sometimes we can't, just because sheer volume would be overwhelming. But the funny thing about it is that the fewer problems our clients have, the more they think they don't need us. When in reality, the reason they have fewer problems is because they're using us. And it's the same thing with your IT company. If you have technical problems all the time and they're not fixing the server drive before it loses all of your data, and they're only fixing things when you tell them it's broken, you might want to upgrade. That's what you get with break fix. You want it managed. You want to keep all of those things running all the time. Drives warn you before they fail. Okay. SSDs, not as much, but those old physical drives, it's probably in your server. They give warning for weeks, days, weeks, months, sometimes. It's like I've seen a RAID array still work with a failed drive for 2 years before another drive finally gave out. So at any rate, get an appointment, get your security assessment, and that's going to be it. End of the show. Thank you again for your time. Enjoyed it. Have a nice day and weekend.
Thanks, guys.